Hello everyone, I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here with a special edition from our videos to talk about how to make the pillowcase that the Valley of the Mist Quilters Guild uses with our philanthropy donations. Now, first of all, I want to thank all of you who came to our sew-in on during the August meeting this year. I think we had a really good attendance, but there were some people that were still a little unclear about how to do this pillowcase using what we call the burrito method that makes a French seam. So, and you know, we use this for philanthropy, but it's also a really nice idea to make an accompanying pillowcase when you give a quilt, and then you can use the pillowcase like as the wrap, and you just stick the quilt inside of it. And but we, our philanthropy committee really likes to put a quilt with a pillowcase for all the foster kids that we donate quilts to. So Shelley's going to go over what fabrics you need first, and obviously if you're doing it for yourself or for a quilt that you're giving away, you might want to try to coordinate the fabrics with that quilt or not. It's up to you. But philanthropy group tries to do pretty good contrast so you can see the different parts. And here is a finished pillowcase up here. So as Shelley's talking, you can see the different parts.
Okay, so we have a cuff. This is the cuff. And this is the accent piece. You might be able to tell I've already pressed this so it's not laying flat. And then we have the main body of the pillowcase. Okay.
Are you going to give sizes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, the cuff is...
These are all three are the width of fabric. And when we say width of fabric, yes, we assume you're using quilting fabric that's around 42 to 44 inches wide.
Right. And this one's 9 inches wide. And the accent piece is 3 inches wide.
3 inches wide.
And then the main body is 26 to 27 inches.
26 will do it. 27 is 3/4 of a yard. So, you know, do what you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you were, these instructions don't really work well because I've done it for little infant pillows or small pillows. It takes quite a bit of adaptation, and I'm not even going to go into that.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is press all the fabric.
Right.
You really want them flat because, and when you cut that body piece, really try to make it a rectangle because, you know, the pillowcase kind of needs to have square edges.
Right. And once you're sewing it and it's not right, you're going to wonder what's going on.
Right. Okay, so you press them out, and then what do you do, Shelley?
Okay, the next step is you're going to need to take this accent strip and press it, fold wrong sides together lengthways, and so you end up with a strip like this.
With the right sides out.
Right.
Okay, so this
out.
piece is hard to tell because it's just purple.
Yeah.
And then we're going to take this down. So this is one set, and I have another set back here that I already have started doing what we call the burrito part. So, Shelley, help me lay this up here, and just along the edge. So you're going to take, and this is kind of hard to tell, but this actually has a little pattern on this white fabric, and this cuff piece now is facing you with the right side up, okay? And I'm going to take the folded strip of the accent fabric. I'm trying to open it so I can see that this is the fold right here. It doesn't want to see it's folded together. And I line it up, and I just kind of lightly, I line up one edge.
The raw
edge on one edge of the, and then I'm gonna just put a few clips along the top holding these raw edges together. Okay, so right side up. These are right sides out, so, you know, right now, at this point, everything is kind of right sides against each other. And then I'm going to take this piece of the body fabric, and I'm going to put it, this is the only thing that's going to go down, right sides down. Okay, so, and then I'm going to line up these edges again, and I'm going to clip along, can you do a clip, shall we, we'll do a few clips along this raw edge. So we have all these raw edges together. Now this is the part that confuses people the most. So you might do it with more clips. But you're going to take this piece of the body fabric and kind of pull it up, and I like to keep it like an inch away from the top. And just keep rolling it up. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, how you roll it, but you want to see the bottom of the cuff below it, and at least half of the cuff. See, so we have it up like this. And then you're going to take this, and this is where you make your burrito, and you pull this cuff up till this edge now is even. And you're going to clip that in. And you're going to go along and make sure and line up this edge again. You've got, this is my starting edge of when I sew. That's the one I line up. So then you're going to clip all along here till you have all these raw edges together. And then after we do that, and we're going to take a break at this point and sew one of these, you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along this long edge.
You might have, you know, where they don't line up.
Yeah, one edge should be all lined up. One edge most likely will not match. That's fine. Okay, so we'll be back in a minute with our burrito. Okay. Okay, we're back, and here is the burrito that I sewed. So as you can see, it's joined at the top, all the raw edges, and now I'm going to take it and roll and basically turn it inside out. So while I'm doing that, Shelly's already done that with hers.
Right.
And done the pressing, and she's going to talk about that, which is really important.
Right. So the pressing it's really important to make sure this seam that you just sewed, that you've pressed it so that it's up towards the cuff, and it's, you know, nice and perfect. And then you turn it over and do it on the back side also. If you don't do it, it's going to mess you up when you're trying to match your seams later.
Yeah, if you don't press the cuff part from both sides, it won't be. The fabric kind of needs to be taut,
right?
You know, and this accent piece needs to be laying down. And actually, Shelly and I were going to go further, but and I'm going to show you this in just a second when I turn it out. But the next step actually, which is an added step that some people don't do, but we really encourage you to do it. And philanthropy insists that you do it, because if you don't sew down this little accent piece to the body behind it, and we do it right near the edge of the where it's pressed, where the fold is. When you wash it, it'll curl up, and after the first time you use it, it looks messy.
Yeah. So before you do that,
before
you do sew it, you probably should trim it, or do you think we should?
No,
sew
I trim
it
it after. I sew it first. I thought you sewed yours first.
Yeah, I might have. I don't know. It probably doesn't matter which you do first, but yeah, I probably did, because you have that extra on there.
Yeah,
and right now you see, as you can see, you got extra down here.
Right, so here's as I pulled out the burrito, this is what it looks like, and this is what we were talking about that really needs to be pressed down, because it's not taut against here. And if you want, when we finally put the next step, in a future step, when we're going to sew these side seams, these kind of need to be even, so that it lines up and looks like kind of like a professional pillowcase.
Right.
So what we need to do is, after you do your burrito, unroll it, open it out, press it, sew down this piece of the accent, and then you're going to trim this edge even. So she's even going to have to trim off some of the body, because her accent piece is a little shorter.
The shortest.
Yeah, you're going to trim to the shortest one.
Yeah.
And the other side, you can check it. You lined up on one side, it should be good. If it's not, make it good. And if you
have the salvage on, you got to cut.
Right. Yeah. Regardless, if you haven't already taken off the salvages, and you can leave them on, you don't have to pre-cut them off. This is when you would cut off the salvages and make it neat. And so I bundle this up. One thing that you could do when you are trimming, I'm trying not to take off our backing fabric, trimming this up, is you actually can kind of do a test fold and see if you're going to be square. But you don't have to. You can do that later. Just trim, trim this one edge straight, trim off the extra, and make sure that this other edge looks straight too. Sorry, I've got a mess there. Okay, and we will come back with the next step after that. Okay, so we have sewn down our little accent piece, and Shelley trimmed the edges of her.
Now they're even.
Yes, and then remember, you just trim whichever is long, whether it's the cuff, the accent, the body. Just make all three even.
Right.
On both sides. Now the next step, you're going to line up, and you're going to put this wrong sides together. So right sides are out. Oh, you know what? And I want to back up a second.
Okay.
Remember, we are not quilting. We're basically garment sewing, and we in quilting we don't normally take back stitches. On just to get yourself back in practice on all your seams, take a back stitch. You really don't need it until the part we're coming to now. Right. But these seams have stress on them, so it doesn't hurt to take a back stitch.
Especially these last two ones we're doing.
Okay. Yeah. So now she's going to line up these. And the first part she's going to line up is the top. Right. This is the most important edge because this is the top of the pillowcase, and hopefully the cuff is the same width, that it matches up.
Right. Line up the cuff here.
But more importantly, that outer
and then it comes to these match at the top.
Okay.
And then even the accent strip should match, so they kind of.
Right.
So when you sew them together,
it's not critical, but
it's not critical, but they should.
And then when you come down to this bottom corner, you're going to match. So you're going to, in our instructions, it says you're going to match up this L, and this is the L that you're going to sew. Okay, so she's going to clip that all together and sew a scant seam, a scant 1/4 inch, maybe even an 1/8 inch.
Yeah. If you can do an 1/8 inch, I would do an 8. It's going to be easier for you later, maybe.
Okay, so
as long as you can catch it good.
Right. Okay, so I went ahead and I've done that part. So now you can see I have a very scant seam along here, and my corners match, everything matches. This fabric, actually, the way it was cut, and it came to me in this kit this way, the pattern wasn't exactly square. So these lines don't match up, but that's okay. This part is mainly what they're going to see. So we're going to sew this L, and it's a scant seam. And when you're done, Shelley looks at it now before she sews it, but I think it's even more important to look at it after. And if you have a lot of fringy pieces, cut them off. Yeah. Because like on this one, we were in a rush the other night. It's hard to see, but there's a few little stray edges that stick out at the end because our final last step is to make the enclosed seam.
And it's a lot harder to trim them after.
It is. If you trim them now, you don't have to worry about accidentally cutting the fabric.
Yeah.
So trim them now, and then the next step for me. So you're going to sew that L. So we're giving you quite a few steps right now.
Remember, first step, wrong sides together.
Wrong sides together. So now, after I trim this edge, the next step that I find very important is I'm going to turn this pillowcase inside out. But as I'm doing it, and I can do it in both parts, I really want to flatten this seam. I don't have to flatten it open. What I care is that this part is kind of taut. Okay? And so when I turn the pillowcase inside out and I press it, I want this seam to be really flat.
Perfectly. Yeah.
And it's really, and you're going to use your bodkin or your little purple thing, whatever, and poke out these corners, make them nice and pointy corners. And this bottom seam is the harder one to get flat. But if you don't, it's really hard to encase this seam. So that's your next step. Is you're going to do that L. So that first L, take back stitches on it, and then you're going to turn it, you're going to trim those loose threads off, and then you're going to turn it inside out and press out that seam. Like I said, it doesn't need to be open necessarily, the actual seam part. You want the seam flat.
Flat, yeah.
Okay, and then we'll come back and talk about the final step. Okay, so we're back, and as you can see, Shelley sewed her narrow seam, and then she turned it inside out. Well, yeah, so now it's inside out. And she pressed it really good. And this long seam, it's easy because you can lay it open on the ironing board and press it down.
Right.
Now the end seam, I don't know if Shelley did it this way, but a trick that I have is I take and I kind of, see if I can do this here, and I kind of pull the seam down like this, and I press straight along there to get that seam nice and flat, and then I roll it back up, and now there's going to be a crease on this side, and I turn it over, and then I press this, and now I have a nice crisp seam on this side. And you can see she poked out her corners so they're nice and almost
pretty square.
Pretty square. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew that seam again. And this is, what they call a French seam. It's really just an enclosed seam, but the term is a French seam. So now you're going to take a full 1/4 inch seam. I do want to back up. If you forget on the last step to take the scant seam, that's fine. Don't take it out. You just have to take a bigger seam this time.
Right.
And if you forget to do that, then you do have to take it out.
Yeah,
because it'll look like a hot mess.
Yeah.
So
you're trying to get your raw edges inside this seam. The next seam.
So now you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and that 1/4 inch should be enough to encase the raw edges of that last seam.
Right.
And if you didn't do that, now here we have a little bit of just flyaway pieces that can be trimmed off.
Right. And you might have some of those. No matter
you might
what.
have some of those, but if you don't get it, then you would have all these little hairs like sticking out, and it would look like it would look
not
horrible.
Neat. Wouldn't look neat.
Yeah. So Shelley, did you put a ruler before you turned it inside it? Put a ruler along the edge and just trim anything that was like sticking off? That's what I did.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So that was on this inner edge.
Right.
If there were loose pieces. When we are at the sew-in, a lot of times we don't take the time to do that. Number one, we have limited space.
Right.
And we always seem to be in a contest to see who can make the most pillowcases. But at home, you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
So now let's go on to the next step. We're going to sew the seam. This is the most critical one at this upper edge. Take a really good back tack because you're going to be pushing a pillow in against this seam, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see you back, and when we come back, we will have a finished pillowcase. You'll just need to turn it right side out,
and press
we'll
it.
show that. Okay. So we have our finished pillowcases, and they look great.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing how easy it is to make this.
They really are easy.
Really nice pillowcase. You can see the nice finished enclosed seam. The one thing that I told Shelley I would mention at the end for quilters who aren't really used to turning things a lot. I mean, actually, appliqueurs have to do it a lot.
That's true.
I was going to show you that, quilters, we are very inventive. And there's lots of things you can use to poke out those corners. Now, obviously, the thing that you're supposed to use is something like this bodkin, which I have. But I was telling Shelley, it always falls to the bottom of my thing. It's got a nice round point. It's not going to poke a hole. It does a really nice job.
That's kind of the important thing. Don't use something that's going to poke a hole.
Right, but I'm going to show some things. So, okay, the other thing that I use is my purple thing, which, this end will poke. Don't poke too hard. You can poke through it.
You can use the other end too, either.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
We have this other thing. We call it we call it our silicone finger.
Yeah.
Because you can iron on it.
Yeah.
But this end, they work for poking it out. This is also works when you're pressing open seams, but it's kind of short. So old schooly, your seam guide, I bet you didn't know that point right there, that's for turning. You can use,
Whoops.
oh, I just dropped it. I had a little ruler, the corner of a ruler. Okay, you can use the end of your ripper. I mean, that's this little end, it's almost perfect. Don't use the pokey thing.
No.
You're going to poke a hole in it. But one thing I learned in one of my very first quilting classes was a chopstick, a wooden chopstick. If you take a wooden chopstick and put it in your pencil sharpener, it's the same as sharpening a pencil. And it's kind of a pointy but soft end. Works great for poking it out.
Okay.
So anyway, so this is our little bonus video that we're giving you on how to make these pillowcases. And now you can make them for friends and family, plus make a lot for philanthropy.
Right.
So remember, challenge quilts are all due at the September meeting. Let's get those done. And then the quilt show is coming up in Old Town Temecula, first Saturday in October. It's free to come to. We'll have auction quilts. We'll have beautiful quilts on display throughout Old Town. And a boutique with lots of smaller items, including small quilts and little thingamabobs, all kinds of them.
Things people are making, yep.
I know one of the ladies has a 3D printer and she prints ruler stands. It's actually her daughter. And we have ornaments, and there's little zipper cases.
Actually, I don't even know what all
wine
have.
bags.
Probably.
Lots of little things to buy at the boutique.
Yeah.
All right, so have a fun rest of your summer.